Do you remember the parable? The parable that, the gospel? The parable was a story about what? The sower and the seed. And the seed, Reverend Sundquist was here. Some of the seed fell on hard ground. Some of the seed fell on rocky ground. Some of the seed fell on ground and it started to bear fruit, but then what happened? The weeds came up. And then finally, the fourth category, some of the seed fell on what? Good ground. And just like those tiny little itty-bitty seeds, they go into the ground, into the darkness. And if it's, for instance, the seed of an oak tree, that tiny little seed goes in the darkness, and this magnificent, amazing thing grows from that seed in the darkness. And so the question then, of course, and the parable that Jesus is telling is to get us thinking, do you know one of the main reasons Jesus uses parables, and you know, Matthew chapter 13, we're in Matthew chapter 13, we're in the Gospel of Matthew, we're in year A of the church calendar, and so we're in A is Matthew's Gospel primarily. Matthew chapter 13 alone has 7 parables. And so last week was the parable of the sower and the seed. This week, the parable is about a garden, and a garden in which the owner sows good seed, nighttime comes, and what happens? We just read it. Yes, while he was sleeping in the dark, in the night, the enemy comes and sows weeds. So, question for you this morning, before we go into our parable. And one of the things that parables are designed to do, which was between questions and parables, these are the main ways of Jesus teaching. And one of the things that a parable is designed to do is to disturb you. Especially when we think we've got it all figured out and we're doing pretty darn good. So Jesus tells a parable about a garden and wheat and weeds. And so we have this question, all of us this morning, are there weeds in the garden of your soul this morning? Well, I know that there are. I know that there are many weeds in the garden of my soul. And so the follow-up question to that question is, facing the disturbing fact that there are weeds in my soul, how does that make you feel? Just ponder that for a bit. How does it make you feel to admit and to recognize that there are actually weeds? Never mind the person sitting next to you or in front of you or behind you, but that there are weeds in your soul. Disturbing, but true. And how does that make you feel? And we need to think about that because Jesus is trying to get us to realize something through the parable of the wheat and the weeds. So, if you take your insert, if you want, your choice, but I've broken it down in 3 easy-to-follow points, okay? Jesus tells a parable about the weeds in each of our hearts. Here are 3 keys to understanding the weeds in our gardens. First of all, in the narrative, Jesus starts with this. All 7 parables in Matthew 13 start out with, the kingdom of heaven is like. And in this story about what the kingdom of heaven is like, he tells us that an owner went out in his field and sowed really good seed, and in the night an enemy came and sowed weeds. So the first question, the field, what is the field? Your soul. It's your soul individually, and it's the soul of humanity collectively. Weeds sown by an enemy, not pastor making it up. Jesus telling a disturbing parable. There are weeds in the world, there are weeds in everyone, and there are weeds in you. Number 2, we've got 3 main things at play in this parable: the enemy, the weeds, and the master. So the good seed is sown in the field. Nighttime comes, the darkness comes, the enemy comes, the weeds are sown, and the weeds begin to grow. And when the servants realize it, they go to the master and they say, "Master, should we root out those weeds?" And what does the master say? Leave them there. Why would he say that? So I asked a question at the beginning. How does it feel? How does it make you feel to face that there are weeds in your own soul? Usually how it makes us feel, I will say how it makes me feel, is it makes me feel disappointed. It makes me feel discouraged. It makes me think, oh my God, I got to get this fixed. Oh my goodness, I got to pull those weeds. What if people see how weedy this part of my garden is? What am I going to do? Master, should we pull these weeds? And he says, no. Leave them there. They have a purpose. Let them be. What? Master, weeds have a purpose? Let them be. Point 3, what purpose do weeds have in my life? Don't you think that's a pertinent question to this disturbing parable, that there are weeds in the gardens of our souls? So I'm not supposed to root them out? You mean leave them there? They have a purpose? Well, what purpose do weeds have in my life? A, they expose the difference between that which produces desirable fruit and that which takes up space, stealing water and nutrients and energy. How do we know the difference between the fruit, or to put it in Pauline language, New Testament, the fruit of the Spirit and the fruit of the flesh? How do we know the difference? We know them by contrast. The weeds will teach me what's going on in my heart, taking up space and stealing the living water and the nutrients that my soul actually needs. Do you know that what you pay attention to pays you? What purpose do weeds have in my life? B, they provide an opportunity for grace, acceptance, and humility. So if you go down below, you'll see a definition. Weeds. What are they? We're so out of touch with the weeds of our souls. Weeds, what are they? Well, hatred, self-righteousness. Well, I'd never do that. What is that guy's problem anyway? The desire to be controlling all the time, that's a weed. Selfishness, greed, a condemning spirit, a complaining spirit. Did you do any complaining last week? Bitterness. Well, why don't they do it this way, for heaven's sakes? Sick and tired of that. Unforgiveness, pride, arrogance, condescension, looking down on others, and the list goes on and on. Do you get the sense of what those weeds feel like and smell like? So here's the takeaway. Here's the main takeaway I want you to take away from this. What purpose do weeds have in our lives? Well, they expose the difference, but also they provide opportunity for grace, acceptance, and humility. Every time you are met with the weeds of another person's garden and it's agitating and offending and discouraging and disappointing and you don't like it, it's an opportunity for you to be grace. And when we are grace to others in the weediness of their persons, guess what? We become the presence of God in the kingdom of Christ. Now, here's the big one. That sounds so philanthropic and so holy and righteous that I could be grace to people when they don't deserve it. But I asked you a question. When I face that there are weeds in my soul, and if you don't know that there are weeds in your soul and you're not aware of the weeds in your soul, this message will be totally meaningless to you. But if I have the courage and the fortitude and the integrity to be honest with myself, and I face the reality of the weeds in my soul, not just the weeds in other people, but in me, guess what? It's an opportunity for you to be gracious and forgiving and accepting to yourself. Strange thing happens. The more I can be gracious and accepting to myself, the more gracious and accepting I am of others. And finally, the third thing, C, what purpose do weeds have in my life? Weeds, or darkness make us aware of our own dependence on a higher power? God wants you to be aware that you don't have it all together. Sorry to say. God wants you to be aware that you can't figure it all out. And God wants you to know that you can't fix it and make it right. And that, guess what? Here's a shocker, newsflash. Even if you could control and make everything the way you think it should be, it would be a disaster. Our weeds, our darkness, make us aware of our own dependence on a higher power. God, I can't. You can. I surrender. Weeds are our invitation into that reality, and when we step into that reality, we change our consciousness, which is why, and it's in your bulletin, I put it there for you, James says, "My sisters and brothers, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." When the weeds are exposed and the darkness sets in, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, and let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete and lacking nothing. That's what weeds do. That's what the darkness does. And so, in closing, if you look down at the bottom to the two quotes from Paul Coutinho, S.J., a person won't get to the depth of him or herself until that person is at home in the dark with their weeds. Dark places, when we can't fix it, control it, figure it out, are like transit places. If we use transit places properly, we will find new vigor and energy for the next stage of our journey. The darkness, the weeds, have a purpose. The darkness can either make us or break us. We know that pain is a fact of life. What is your pain this morning? Disappointment in a significant person? Disappointment in the way life is unfolding? Disappointment, dissatisfaction. We know that pain is a fact of life, but we also realize that pain we don't resist purifies and enlightens us. Okay, you know what? That's really disappointing. That really hurts. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to try to control it. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm just going to name it and admit, you know what? That's painful. That hurts. You know, Elizabeth, sometimes when you go to love somebody, like what if you gave me this card? And I'm like, oh, hey, oh, yeah. Wouldn't that hurt? Because you wanted to love, and then the love that you wanted to give didn't matter. That hurts. That really hurts. That hurts. No, we realize that the pain we don't resist purifies and enlightens us. But pain we resist, this is really interesting, becomes suffering. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain's going to happen, can't escape it. If I just admit it, name it, and say, God, here it is, I can't handle it, you can, I'm trusting you. I can actually grow into new places in that pain and because of that pain. But if I resist it, try to fix it, control it, guess what? I fall into suffering. The pain is going to be there. James says, count it all joy when the pain comes, when you recognize the weeds. They're here as your friends to teach you things you could not learn any other way. To free you from your ego and your pride and your arrogance and your self-righteousness and your condemnation and condescension. They're here to free you because that's not where life is. What does this gospel say to me? It says, Jesus is so cool, he's so amazing, he's okay that you got weeds. We all got weeds. He's not mad, he's not angry, he's not threatening to punish us because of he's saying, yeah, you got weeds. Learn from your weeds. They're a gift. You don't have to be perfect. Newsflash, because you're not. And neither am I. I got weeds. You got weeds. What is that old spiritual? I got weeds, you got weeds. All God's children got weeds. We got weeds. God is not upset. He's not disappointed. He's not disgusted. He's saying, yeah. Now, the good news is, at the end of the age, God's going to deal with the weeds. He's going to bind them all up and burn them all up. And we're all going to be free from our weeds. Thanks be to God. In the meantime, we live in a world and a garden of weeds. Let them have their purpose. Let the darkness have its purpose. Ken Berry was telling me about 4 months ago, do you know that plants need darkness to grow? Isn't that interesting? Plants need water and light and nutrients. Absolutely, Elizabeth, they do. But they also need the darkness. Just like when you put a seed in the ground, is it light in the ground? Dark, really dark. Yes, and the light actually draws it up through the darkness into being. And so we see the darkness and the light. Guess what? They work together. God created them both, the darkness and the light. So take this with you as you go. Let the darkness be your teacher. Don't judge yourself. Let the darkness and the weeds in your life be an opportunity to be gracious and loving and generous and forgiving to yourself and to others. Are we not a world in desperate need of that kind of unconditional love in the darkness of all that's going on? So, I was greatly comforted. Your practice for the week is when you become aware of a weed, name it and pray. God, what are you teaching me? God, what are you teaching me?